Welcome back to the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Today's guest is Sarah Teipel, head girls basketball coach at Mundelein High School. We talked to Coach Teipel about team culture development, taking over at her alma mater, and individual growth as a coach. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast.
All right, Coach. So thanks for joining us. As always, we want to start with our opening tip. So for you, just kind of talk to us a little bit about the new Mundelein program you're taking over, kind of what made you want to return. And there does seem to be a lot of excitement around your hire. So kind of take us through maybe how you maintain that excitement going forward.
Yeah, well, thanks, John and Todd, for having me on. Definitely excited to be here and discuss basketball and the coaching and teaching world with both of you. Returning back to Mundelein, I mean, it being my alma mater and the community I grew up in for most of my life, getting a chance to, go there as a student and play sports there. Obviously you develop that pride and that love for that school. And I had such an awesome experience there growing up. So always had kind of in the back of my head a little bit of a dream to return back. It kind of just seemed like the timing just fell in place. But when I heard about the, head coaching opportunity and then they had a teaching opportunity as well, couldn't have been more excited to return. Just because, like I said, I just felt like a piece of my heart and self was always in Mundelein. So always had a dream to kind of return back and have a chance to teach and lead. And it was exciting. I think, like you said, there was some excitement from the community just because I do have still some relationships with some people there in the community. And I think helping, maintain that excitement is just me bringing that energy with each day. I do have a staff around me that has a lot of passion as well. So, you have that excitement of the hire, but then I think it's important as a coach to when you're teaching and coaching. So I did this in camp, you just keep things fresh. You're constantly finding new ways to teach things and, different examples of your standards and the culture you're starting to build. So the girls keep their interest level in what you're trying to teach every single day. So I think you maintain that energy just through bringing it every single day yourself. And we do that as a staff. And then, like I said, just keeping things fresh in practice and in camp so that the girls have that interest level and I think it helps with investment.
What are some things you kind of want to do, now that you've had a summer to look at your personnel? What are some things you want to do offensively and defensively?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely, when I look at my philosophy of coaching, feel that I'm a defensive minded coach, even though I love offense as well. But this summer, was less about the X's and O's and more about building those relationships and then teaching the girls how to play together, and really kind of forming those bonds and relationships to where they trusted each other on the court, and started to know how to really truly compete. So, I haven't spent a ton, even though, I've broken down some fundamental aspects of running offense and what we're going to start doing. But a lot of our summer was spent breaking up different fundamentals and game situations. And like I said, to just really try to get them to understand how to truly compete and be, physically and mentally tough on that floor so that we could, finish a game from the start to the finish. So that's been my focus this summer. But mindset offensively and defensively, I think it's about personnel. You kind of got to change as a coach when you see what you have, and tweak some things that you do. So, I believe in pressure man and at times, depending on who you're going against. And offensively, some motion and some sets. But like I said, that's not a lot of what we focused on this summer.
All right, so you kind of led perfectly into it. Let's kind of go back to Dundee Crown, and then we'll transition into Mundelein here. So you took over Dundee Crown, and they didn't have as much success the years before you took over. And then obviously you built it up, and you're winning sectionals. So what were some of those 2 or 3 things that you thought were key when you took over Dundee Crown to kind of building it up towards that sectional. And then maybe compare and contrast now that you had more years in, right? Maybe some of those things you'll do similarly at Mundelein, or some things you're like, well, you know, let's do this differently to build that success.
Yeah, I think, you know, walking in a Dundee Crown, you know, having some girls that experienced some loss and some failure at the beginning, it was kind of bringing that attitude of, like we talked about at the beginning, like energy and investment in each one of them. But kind of changing that culture from the beginning. I think 2 to 3 things are, and you talk about it a lot, I know you guys hear it a lot, but like those connections and making them authentic, like actually showing each girl that you care about learning their name, building a relationship with each one of them, knowing something about them was important, because then that increases buy-in and trust and belief in what you say. So I think that was an important thing, like just showing my authenticity from the start and what I represent and what I value as a coach, and showing that energy was important, and from my staff. And then from there, you know, setting high standards and making sure each girl understands that every single one of them will be held to the same high standard every single day. And then the third thing I think is just so important is in basketball and every team sport is, you know, getting them to understand how to make the person next to them better. That, you know, so much of our success in building our culture was, you know, stressing a family culture, that we had everyone's back. So I think the third thing would just be really spending some time teaching these girls how it looks on the court. And once you build that relationship with your teammates, what it means to truly have their back on the court. And I think those were kind of 3 main things that led us to the success we ended up having.
So I kind of want to expand on that a little bit before we go into the next question. For you, in your first year coming up at Mundelein, let's take out wins and losses. Obviously, that's a measuring stick. But what are some ways you're going to measure your guys' success this coming year on Mundelein?
You know, I think you measure success in a lot of ways. Like you said, you know, you can do it by the numbers, you know, statistics and stuff, but there's a lot of other ways you can measure success. I think one of the big things, and you do set goals, so maybe it is a little stat driven, but feeling like the team is giving their ultimate best for one another an entire practice every single day, and then it carries into the game. And, you know, I think coaching and playing sports is so much more than just the game itself. So I think seeing my team feel like they understand holding the bar so high for themselves in life overall. So, as a student first. So I think this year, just seeing my team understand that, you know, the high expectations we set in our culture doesn't just translate to basketball and what we do, it's a life thing. So seeing all of them kind of buy into the fact of what we represent and what we value, I think that leads to that enjoyment in the sport. So I'd like to see them enjoy this first season, give them memorable experiences, but I think seeing them truly compete in every single game would be a huge goal. And I mean, I think you measure that by, you might have to look at some small goals and stats, but it's not stat driven in everything we do. It's just the little things that they would do during games and practices that prove that.
So for the listeners and for Todd, I can't remember if this was my first or second year at Res. We were playing in the Dundee Crown Christmas tournament. I'll never forget this. I walked out of the locker room and I saw your whole team was sitting in the stands between the games, watching their next opponent. All of them had the notebooks in front of them, scouting the next opponent. There was no coach around. It was just the 10, 11, 12 of them. And it was one of those things where I was like, wow, there is a high level of player accountability here. And so for you, what are some things you do to establish that accountability, that player-led accountability within your program?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most difficult things. I think you guys would agree as coaches.
Yep.
You always see the quote of a player-led team is much better than a coach-led team. And I've said that to teams, and I've had teams that, you know, one of my most successful was definitely more player-led. But I think building the relationships is the first foundation of that, but then also getting them to understand what greatness looks like. And in any sport, if you want to be great at it, you have to be self-accountable, like you affect each other. So what you directly do affects your teammate. So if we can all share the same vision and we can all, set our differences aside. And then when we step on that court, we love each other and we want the same thing and we share that vision together, then they start to understand what accountability looks like. And we give examples. So accountability is something that we talk about all the time. So something that our coaching staff did, during many of the seasons where accountability was one of our standards, and talking about like how it looks as a player to be accountable to your team. So they would write things on a note card and I wouldn't tell them what to write. I would have them write down an example of what it looked like to be accountable in the game or, off the court. So I think, when you saw that team, it was just, they truly understood that they wanted to prepare. I think going into games, you want your players to be confident. So they really kind of understood that, hey, we want to take some notes and talk as a group and understand who we're going up against. And it's just something through repetition and consistency of talking about it and revisiting that I felt like they really understood as a group. So I think that, revisiting those things and then, constantly explaining the why behind it helps them understand that.
So you're going into your 10th year as a head coach. I kind of want to talk about the process of learning as a coach, right? We talk about the players learning and developing. Kind of looking back, right? Maybe some things you were like, yeah, I'd definitely do that again. And I know we all have, oh man, why did I do that early, right? And your process for kind of evaluating how you're going about things and if it's working for you and your team.
Yeah. So something I've learned over the last 10 years, like what?
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
something you took away, like, or something early, you're like, oh man, I did this. I thought this was a great idea. And I'm like, and then now you're like, well, maybe we could have done it a little bit better, or
yeah.
something that you've used throughout your 10 years that you've stuck with that really worked well.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I've learned as a coach is that the experience and like the life lessons that you give the girls is so much of a lying tremendous reason why they succeed on the floor. So maybe when I was a young coach, I think you don't understand that as much. Like you maybe put some more time, and believe me, I put a ton of time into practice and stuff and my plans and everything, but giving them experiences with one another and memorable, trips and little things that we've done gets them to want to, I think, trust you with the things that you're asking them to do on the court too. I think the biggest thing I've pulled away as a coach is when your players revisit, and I've had a lot of them come back and talk and visit our coaches, is so much more about basketball is the life lessons and the experience you give these girls. Because it's my goal that they're better people when they leave. So things that they're doing once they leave high school, are they being good students? Are they making an impact in the society? Little things like that. So I think that would be one of the biggest things I've pulled. It's not just about basketball. You're making better people. So that's a thing I think I learned from being young and going through all this. For my teams.
So I kind of want to dig a little deeper in that topic of coaching learning. So for you, when you set out the season ends, and you think about ways you want to grow, and then you think about ways you want your assistants to grow. Take our listeners through, do you do any kind of exit meetings with the coaches and give them things to work on, or what's kind of your process for your own self-learning? Season ends, you say to yourself, hey, I want to work on X, Y, and Z to better myself. Kind of take us through more of that, I guess you would say in a teaching term, more of that coaching PD time, that coaching professional development.
Yeah. that's huge, that you never stop growing. And usually the way we do things is we meet as a staff in a preseason meeting. We meet at the beginning of the summer too, and just kind of talk about summer goals and what our focuses are going to be. But then we always have a preseason meeting in October, and kind of go over the entire timeline, or, flexible timeline of what we're thinking throughout the season. What are the goals through each program? Usually we've run a feeder program, so we kind of know somewhat of what we're getting if we had that opportunity. So we'll talk about kind of, what we're thinking for the levels if we have a little bit of an idea. But we kind of talk about the key things that we're looking at and kind of revisit some of the standards and values that we want to make sure that we're representing through our program that year. And then, I think providing opportunities for myself and my staff to attend coaching clinics. So I know over COVID, the last couple of years, there was a lot more over Zoom, but getting up, sending links out and encouraging my coaches to be with me and let's attend this coaching clinic. So there was like a Coaching You. I did a PGC clinic. I've done the IBCA clinics. But surrounding yourself, I think as a coach, and you guys would feel the same way, surrounding yourself by great people that love the game, that want to learn too, so you can learn from each other. And so just sharing that value to them, I think, encourages them to want to keep learning. And, I think I do a post-season meeting with all of our coaches too at the end of the year. And we kind of talk about the season and things that maybe could be adjustments, that we could have maybe made, or things we could have done better, and then kind of map out the summer. So that's usually how we do things. But I think I tell my team too, the minute I stop learning is the minute I should stop coaching and teaching. So that growth component, isn't just important for them. It's important for as you go through life. So that's kind of how we do things.
So as you look to hire assistants, whether it was at Dundee Crown or eventually as you now go over to Mundelein, when you're looking to hire assistants, what are some things you're looking for in those assistants? Obviously, you kind of alluded to a little bit of a growth mindset there in that answer, but what are some other things you're looking for in hiring assistants?
I think passion and willingness to put in hard work and dedication to the program. Basketball in any sport, but it's a long season, there's a lot to it, and it's not just the season, there's off season. And it's hard to find coaches that want to put the time in. So I think it's really important to, bring people on your staff that have the ability to put time in, and kind of truly show you that they're invested in, not just, one other job, but they care about the community and the school that they're in, and they want to try to build what you're talking about. So, I think loyalty is an important thing too. I always talk to my coaches that I'll have their back, and I think it's big as a head coach that they have yours too, and that there's open communication. So I'm big on being a humble leader too. I never come in like top down with my staff. I'm very open with them when we communicate. So I think it's just important to find a staff that, you feel like kind of fit the culture that you're trying to build. And then I think end all be all is willing to put the time in. And like you said, has that growth mindset of really wanting to continue through and continue to, grow.
So we saw you took your team to South Carolina for a team camp, and you talked about those experiences and for your players. But I wanted to kind of ask you, I'm going to tweak this a little bit. How do when you go through those experiences and maybe you come back and you're now in summer camp, what are some of the indicators for you that those experiences were hitting home and helping build those relationships, not only player to player, but coach to player, or helping with your communication? Obviously that's more than just numbers, right? You can't look at a number and say, hey, we communicated well, right? I mean, I guess somebody's probably figured it out somewhere, words per minute or something, but how do you know that those things are starting to take seed in your program and benefit your program. Those are great.
Yeah, I think first day, of camp, and then every day forward, relationships can't be forced. So I did the best I could with my staff with being transparent and trying to like do little things before camp to get it loose and let them have a little fun, but like see who I am. But then when you provide like those trips, I mean, we drove, it took us 20 hours on the way down with traffic, and a lot of moments there in the bus with, singing songs and playing bus games, just to kind of see different sides of the kids, because some of them are shy, and they're afraid to show those sides and get a little loose. And my coaches and I were laughing a little bit at the beginning of our team camp, because when we took our first picture, they're all like this in a picture, and you could tell that they weren't as comfortable even around each other, not just with maybe me, but I think the more you provide opportunities we did a lot of games and had conversations during the game too, like when we're playing games at the camp and we go through the player development session. When the coach talks, we talk as a group, but the more time you spend with them and the more time you provide them, and the more natural it feels. And I think like those relationships are more authentic. So by the end of that trip, I think we spent so much time together and had so much fun that we had a lot stronger relationships. And the girls were at the end of the camp, just, hands around each other for pictures, and different girls were mingling with different girls. And we did, jokes during the drive, like, all right, after this stop for gas, you're switching seats with someone and you got to sit with someone else. So, cause we were driving a bus. So kind of not always forcing it, but, giving them opportunities to sit with someone else and talk with them for a little bit. And I think coming back from that trip, like one thing we did when we left, after we played a game in the house, just talked about, hey, what's one thing you thought this trip helped our team? And I had every girl go around in front of each other, and then give me one memory from this trip that you'll, always bring with you. And a lot of them said, like, I feel like we've become closer. Like almost every single one of them was like, I feel more comfortable around my team. And I think this was big for us, like the relationships, and said some really like strong things. I was like, okay, I'm impressed. And then, some of them said, like I said, hey, I loved winning on the main court when we could play on their main, gym court, but then some of them said, I love to learn to dive in the pool at the house. Like I loved to, the bus ride. I loved playing that fishbowl game. Like, so to some of these kids, like, they love those are the moments they remember. Some of the kids said it was awesome winning with my team on the basketball court, that first win we had. Like, so I think, those trips just really brought us together, to where I think I told you earlier, they start to understand like every single one of the team members matter. Like we all need to be together for us to really fulfill what we want this season. So that trip really helped us build those bonds, I think. And then the rest of summer, that kind of carried through. You saw more girls working with different girls in camp, and there was just a different sense of comfort, comfort level when we were around each other in camp and in weightlifting and everything we were doing.
So we wanted to kind of talk with you about maybe how you help your players in the recruitment process for college. Obviously, you played collegiately yourself. So as a head coach now, I'm going to kind of break this up. What do you communicate to your players that want to play college basketball? How do you kind of have those conversations? And the first kind of question I want to dive into is, Todd and I have talked to lots of guests about the commitment level that girls from going to high school to college, they may not know. I actually ran into a player we competed against last year, and I said, how's your experience at so-and-so university? And she's like, it's a lot of work and time. So kind of how do you talk to your players first just about that level of commitment it takes to play collegiately?
Yeah, I think it's important that, when you talk to girls that want to play, and I always do this, is that they understand, like you said, that it is your life when you're there. So you truly, truly have to love it. 110%. So I try not to do it in a negative way, but be realistic that it's not going to be an easy road. You know, you got to have that resilience through it, and just make sure you truly love it, you know, and this is something that you want. But I think another thing I just talk to them about is, you know, going through the recruiting trail and stuff, it's really stressful. And for a young kid, you know, going through it, they have a million thoughts going through their head. So be organized. I tell them, get an idea of what, you know, whether it be NAIA, Division II, Division III, D1, what your goals are. And then I think I always talk to them, ask questions when you talk to these coaches, if they do call you. Don't just ask questions about their program. You can ask them, but try to learn about who they are as a coach a little bit too. Because I think it's just so important. I think you guys know this too, and it's in high school, it's every level, but there's some good coaches and there's some bad coaches, and there's coaches that do it for the wrong reasons and ones that do it for the right. So I think I try to tell them, you know, try to find a coach that you feel like really is a player coach that like cares about the player, not just the number, and wants to win. And you want, you know, college is a different ball game. They're under more pressure, you know, I guess to win. And not saying that I don't want my players to win too, but it's, you know, important, I think, for the girls to explore programs where they feel like they have a coach that's invested and cares about them as a person first and foremost. You know, because that's what really truly makes them have an experience and that they enjoy. Because like I said, it's their life. So that's kind of what I stress.
And then just for you as a head high school coach, what are some things, you know, you do to maybe assist your student athletes in the process, whether it be talking to collegiate coaches or, you know, networking for them, or, you know, maybe having a conversation with parents who may not understand the process, or, you know, kind of maybe for our listeners, what are some things you've done to kind of assist your kids along the way?
Yeah, you know, I have a lot of college contacts that I do. So I'll recommend some, you know, elite camps and some different, you know, camps during the summer that they could go to be exposed. But then I've definitely shot an email with a quick excerpt about one of my players to a coach and, you know, encourage them to check it out. And if I felt like they could play in their style of program, you know, if I know about that. So yeah, just communicate with my friends in the coaching world, and then not afraid to just shoot an email to a coach I don't know either. You know, I think it helps when the high school coach is involved, because college coaches do find value in that high school sport. And then, yeah, I think talking to parents, I've done it a lot too. It's important. Huddle's big now, and YouTube. These kids are making YouTube channels, and just making sure that, you know, it's not all about the offense. Like, you know, I say, yeah, you can put the offense on the highlights and too, but coaches want to see other things, diving after loose balls, hustle plays. What sets you apart? Body language on the bench. Are you constantly engaged with your teammates? Or are you slouching on the bench? You know, like I talk to the girls about doing so many other little things, and it's not, you know, I think too many kids stress like you got to have 20 points in an AAU game. And I tell them there's a lot of games where I didn't score a ton, but I did a lot of other things on the floor that made the team better. And I think just stressing that to parents too, that the more proactive that they are too, the more that they shoot their daughter's game schedule out there and try to, you know, show the college coaches that they're interested too, helps, you know, get that opportunity to be recruited.
So I wanted to talk to you about build on the relationship piece, but now, you know, the parents and the school community. So what are some of the things, you know, you try to emphasize here, you know, now that you kind of got through the summer, building up those relationships with parents, you know, because we have seniors who obviously kind of know how to conversate, but then you also have freshmen and you have your junior high players and things like that, to not only have a positive relationship with them, but also, you know, help them know some of the expectations for your program as well, and the standards, right? Because that obviously helps in, you know, with the players as well during the season.
Yeah. I think having open communication is key. When my first day of camp, I had a parent meeting and a player meeting. I had a combo. They were both there at the beginning of camp, and didn't talk for a ton of time, but just kind of talked about the standards that we wanted to represent here and what were my values as a coach, and kind of tried to be transparent of who I am. So they got a, kind of an accurate picture of a couple of the little things at the beginning, and then told them about, the pyramid of parent, player, coach. And, it's my goal that, they know what I represent, and that they're not afraid to talk to me if they have a question or concern, and I'm not afraid to talk to them either. I do think it's important to have healthy boundary lines, with your parents. And I think you guys understand that too. But that, like, you also are open enough with them, and you tell them, like, you're not afraid to talk to them if there's something that they have a question about. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. And, but I also think if you're transparent, you have communication with them. So having meetings with them, staying active with emails, and letting them know what's going on. And like you talked about, going through the youth, like starting even with the youth. I've been involved with feeder, and our staff has a lot of times for the last 9 years at Dundee Crown. So you kind of carry your standards and your culture into your feeder. You might not stress things is high level, with them, but the 110% effort and positive attitude, like you explain the why with that, even with the little kids. And so the parents get to understand, like, the things that you do in high school that carries them through the youth league or youth years, so that right when they get to high school, wow, this is exactly what they represent. And I already understood it because this is what we were doing in the youth. So I think, yeah, like I said, the transparency and the open communication, I think, helps parents understand what you're about.
So I think just to finish and with a follow-up on that, the open transparency and the conversations, we actually have talked to a few coaches this offseason who are kind of going from one program to taking over another program. Kind of take our listeners through maybe those conversations you had as you departed Dundee Crown, and then maybe that first conversation you had with those players at Mundelein.
It was a tough emotional decision. I loved being at Dundee Crown and had such an enjoyable, rewarding experience. So I had a player program meeting at the end of, like, right as I was accepting the job. So everyone came into Dundee Crown, and explained to them that, I had accepted that position, and I just wanted them to understand this is such a tough thing. And I just want them to know that it's not about them, like, not looking at it like I'm leaving them, that this was just the best decision for my family. And so I think that was tough, not knowing what they're thinking, but there was a lot of tears. But I think it was just important to be truthful to them about the impact that they made on me too. I felt fortunate and grateful that I felt like I had a positive impact on a lot of them, but I also wanted them to understand that they made a huge impact on me as a coach and a person. And also just kind of telling them that if they ever need anything, I'm still there, and I'm not just disappearing. So, I did stop by one night in summer league, just because I used to run that summer league. So I helped kind of set it all up this summer, but visited some of my coaches, my old coaches, and watched the team, the varsity team a little bit, in the JV. So, I think just leaving in the right way of being authentic on that you're not leaving them, it was a hard decision in life. And this is just part of, the way that sometimes life happens. It's another lesson for them, but, then that first conversation with Mundelein, I think, like I said, I was just very transparent on what I represented and showed that excitement, came in with a lot of energy, and, told them a few things about myself, and tried to learn a couple of things about them, and starting with their names. So it was difficult, but I really tried to learn those names in that first week, because I think that's a big part in them wanting to continue that relationship, is knowing that their name. So that was kind of the timeline of how things worked out.
So as we get into our last two segments, the first one we call 30-second timeout. It's a very loose 30-second. There's no official in your timeout telling you you're done. But this is your platform to talk about yourself or your program or your family, or we've had quite a few guests lately turn the tables on Todd and I and ask us questions. But it's your 30 seconds to kind of talk about whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go quick. So 10 seconds. I think one of the most influential people that in my life, I lost my dad 2 years ago to MS, but resilience is a thing that I think kids need to understand in life. And that's something that he showed me throughout my whole life, and was one of my biggest fans as a player and still as a coach. So just bringing that resiliency that he showed me through his life has helped me have that as an individual, and then use that tool in my teaching and coaching. What's one thing that you guys feel like you've pulled away from your experiences in the coaching world?
Yeah, I would. I lean more towards resilience and being able to handle adversity. It's just such a different world than. I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 40, but like, it's just a different world. There's social media. There's different pressures. There's so much more going on that when I was a kid, I wasn't even aware of. Right, I was playing ball. And how to be able to have conversations about tough topics and be able to kind of find your way through it. It might not always be easy, but you gotta keep plugging away at it. So I like that word, resilience, and just kind of learning how to deal with adversity, maybe not through social media or whatever, but just with authentic conversations, person to person. I think that's a big, not only just for younger kids, but for all of us, right? Learning how to deal with the current landscape we're in.
Yeah.
I would say a long time ago, probably almost 10 years, I had a boss that when I was hired somewhere, he said, just take care of the kids. Don't worry about anything else. Everything else falls into place. I think we all stress about, whether it's in, our day jobs or our coaching jobs, this paperwork or this evaluation or this game, or I got to watch this film, or I got to make sure I run, this during this timeout. I think it's just really important to just remember, just take care of the kids. And I think I've probably repeated that to coworkers and friends or people in the profession more than anybody wants to hear me say it. But I think when you boil it down to that, it just makes things so simple that, you know what, that's fine. You may lose a game. You may, to make an adjustment in a timeout that was wrong. You may, try to do something in a scouting report that doesn't work. In the end, that doesn't really matter. 10 years from now, you're not going to remember what you did in that scouting report. You're not going to remember what was done in that timeout. And so I think it just comes down to just take care of the kids and make sure the kids are okay. And whether you're in teaching or coaching or whatever you're in, I think it's just take care of the kids. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. I like it.
All right, Coach, we're going to move on to our quick hitters, kind of rapid fire.
Okay.
You can answer any way you feel. First question, favorite stadium or town you played in collegiately?
Yeah. We played at Texas A&M when I was in college, and the year we played, they had a double header with the boys right after our game. So I remember they had a men's player, AC Law, that was a strong player at that time that ended up going to the NBA. So it was an awesome experience because Texas A&M's women's team was strong too. But it was a packed house. I mean, they have a huge stadium there, and a lot of people funneled in. I'm not saying they didn't come to watch the women too, but you guys understand that they don't pull as high of crowds. So having that double header, the gym was just packed because people funneled in really early. So that was an awesome experience. We really did stay with them real close. We were down by 5 at halftime, but then they did end up kind of beating us pretty good. And then can I throw one more in? I thought one of my best memories was like December 23rd, my freshman year, we played at Wisconsin. And had a decent crowd in front of us, but we ended up beating them. And that was a huge win for us just because, I think that they kind of went in that game thinking it was an easy win for them, playing a small, mid-major D1. So that was a cool memory. Madison is a great campus too. It's beautiful. So I thought playing at their home court and getting an opportunity to win that game was a cool memory.
Man, I think that's our first AC Law reference ever.
AC Law, yeah. Point guard.
I
Yeah.
like it. All right, for you, call or texting?
Call. I think text is convenient, but I'm definitely personable and like to talk to people. So even if it's a quick call.
Favorite underrated movie?
Okay, this is tough because I'm just being honest. I'm so busy. I don't watch a ton of movies. So I don't know if I have an underrated one. I feel like, when I love like sport movies, I was trying to think of like an underrated one.
If you had to go favorite sports movie, then what would you say?
Oh, I've got a couple. I mean,
What do you got?
I loved watching The Last Dance, of MJ. I love MJ, which was the series, on Netflix. But I loved, Remember the Titans. I loved Coach Carter. I loved the new movie Hustle on Netflix. I thought that was pretty strong. So those are, I would say, some of my faves.
I just watched Hustle. Yeah, that was very good. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're in a car with somebody, would you rather be the passenger or the driver?
Driver. It's funny. I mean, my husband, he likes to drive a lot, so he drives a lot of times when we're together, but I do enjoy driving a lot more than being in the passenger seat. So that would be my pick.
All right. Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour?
Nike.
Nike, you're a Nike. Okay. There we go.
I'm gonna have to switch over because we're Under Armour at Mundelein, even though this is Nike. I guess they must have switched it up a couple years ago, but I've just been used to Nike. We've had Nike for years at Crown, so I just kind of got used to that. So I'm trying to widen my, expand my vision. But
there you go. Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough for jumping on with us. It's good to talk to you and just have a conversation about basketball, and not try to figure out how to beat your teams. That's always it's a little bit easier to have the conversation, but we can't thank you enough. We know you're gonna rock it at Mundelein, and sounds like you're off to an awesome start. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Todd and Jon. It was a pleasure to be on, and thanks again for the invite. Wish you both the best of luck too, and hopefully we can, continue to communicate throughout the year and stuff.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, hosted by Todd Zazadil and Jon Flicky. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout, or subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. For show inquiries, you can email us at afterthetimeout@gmail.com. You can find all of our previous episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching After the Timeout. We appreciate you listening. Tune in next time for more coaching content in-game, out of the game, and anything in between.